Alright, so I read you guys the interview with Silver Doctors that Silver Doctors had with Harvey Organ. I explained this guy's the go-to source when it comes to the paper markets on silver and gold. So here's part 2. And I said in my other video, if I thought this was good enough to do a video on, like there's more good information, I'm going to do one. And there is. So the doc over at Silver Doctor sat down with Harvey Organ for the second of a series of interviews regarding the recent massive cartel intervention in the gold and silver markets post QE4 announcement, the fiscal cliff, the CFTC silver probe, and the unprecedented 20 million ounces of silver still standing for December delivery. Harvey stated that recent evidence seems to validate his long-held suspicions. Hang on. I felt that coming on, and I was going to try to hide it and just read. Ain't no way I'm going to hide that yawn. I had to let it out. Now, Harvey stated that recent evidence seems to validate his long-held suspicion that China is behind the big gold and silver shorts. China is. Through our own government helping. And stated that the nation is draining massive amounts of physical gold and silver over to their side of the pond, over in Asia. Harvey also made the shocking allegation that the COMEX is settling allocated gold and silver storage requests with paper metal. In other words, someone says, I get allocated gold, I've got a big pile of gold or silver. As long as it's in one of the member banks or member vaults of the COMEX, that person can say, all right, I've got this gold, I want you to move it over here or whatever. Put it in this vault. Okay, we got that taken care of. Take care, sir. They didn't move anything. There was no gold or silver. They just gave him a little receipt that said, we moved your gold and silver over to this vault. That's it. I kind of thought we all knew that anyways. But this just makes it a little more clear. The reason... where was this at? Harvey also made shock allegations, okay, and stated that he no longer has any faith whatsoever in the numbers reported by the COMEX gold and silver inventories. The doc asked Harvey if there was an explanation for the absolute hammering of the metals that we've been receiving daily, almost daily, since the QE4 announcement. The reason for the hammering is the control that the bankers need to get on the circumstances. This is not just the United States. You're seeing Europe, Japan, you're seeing QE going globally all at once. So the bankers are nervous as hell. They have to dampen the paper market in gold, but at the same time, they're probably personally purchasing the physical metal, along with China, Russia, and all of the stands, Iraq, Iran. This is taking a huge toll on London. London being the gold and silver capital, whatever, trading entity of the world. As you know, London is really a 100-to-1 paper to physical gold ratio. The problem is that when you start removing that 1 physical ounce of gold to China, you're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the bankers, as they have nothing but hot air to show for it. So in other words, 100-to-1, if there's 100 pieces of paper and they all think that there's a gold coin backing it, or technically 100, so there's only one real gold coin. Or, I'm trying to be simplistic here, but normally a futures contract for gold is 100 ounces. So in other words, one contract is good for 100 ounces. What he's saying is there's 100 contracts out there, all of them claiming 100 ounces, but there's only one thing of 100 ounces to satisfy all 100 of them, and all 100 of those people playing the game, paper contracts, 100 of them all think they have 100 ounces each, but there's only 100 ounces total for all 100 of those people. That's what he's saying, and that's true. This is even higher in the silver market, that ratio. It's ridiculous. So as you can imagine, when you start removing that one physical piece, you just affected 100 paper contracts, and you got to hope and pray that not even one of those paper contracts decide to demand delivery. Because you ain't going to get it. You have to go somewhere else and get it. And take from other areas, etc., such as the allocated gold and silver that people think they have. And again, if it's not in your hands, in your possession, you don't have it. This is why you're seeing all the stories about rehypothecation, repatriation, stealing of allocated gold. They are probably doing all of that. What's happening is that the end game is being played out, and the bankers certainly don't want you to win. And I can tell you that you will know the game is over when you hear Goldman Sachs is on the buy side of gold. At that point, you have a plethora of buyers, no sellers, and the game is over. CFTC Commissioner O'Malley asked me in March of 2010 whether the COMEX could default. I told him yes, it will default. It will default when all the gold leaves U.S. shores and lands in China, Russia, and South Korea. He looked at me and said, South Korea? And I told him, South Korea. And sure enough, South Korea is purchasing gold to a high degree, just like he told him it would. You're now seeing India, all Eastern nations buying physical precious metals. The only nation buying paper precious metals is Mexico. And they certainly found out the hard way when they bought 100 tons and found out it was unallocated. And they simply got a piece of paper stating, congratulations, you own gold. But it's just gold on paper that says you own a certain amount of gold that you don't have. Unbelievable. I believe they are trying to acquire physical now. They as in Mexico. You're now hearing stories of Germany and Austria, and they're trying to repatriate their gold back to the homeland. You can add India to that, and Germany to that, etc. That's when you start seeing, well, I guess he just said Germany, but there's been a few other countries that he didn't mention. That's when you start realizing that the pressure is on London. The moment London is out, you now have the derivative mess. The derivative mess will be huge. You'll probably see a default in London, then a default in the COMEX, and that will do it. I personally spoke with Bart Chilton, who is also a CFTC commissioner, and he had the following words to say. They're wrapping the silver probe up in September, and I expect to have a revealing of what goes on by probably in October. Well, it's now the end of December, and we haven't heard anything. Bart Chilton personally informed me that the investigation on silver manipulation would wrap up in September. Chilton's worried, and I don't think Chilton told him this, but I think it's obvious is why he's saying this. Chilton's worried because they've wrapped it up, but they can't release the findings because it would take everything down. They can't release the results because it's the government that's behind everything. They're behind all of the trades, and they're making such a mess of things that they can't release the results because no matter what they report, they'll be found guilty of a crime. When the doc asked Harvey to explain the rumors of tightness in the silver market, when official COMEX inventories are substantially higher than early 2011, when they dipped below 100 million ounces, Harvey responded, I have no faith whatsoever in the total registered nor the total eligible silver that they record. I have no faith in the numbers for the simple reason that I see too much of the 3 decimal point 000 indicating that it has to be a paper entry, and it's not really there. Remember that this is a physical market. I want to see physical gold and silver. When you consistently see 0.000 in the bar weight, that is paper being traded. Paper silver being inserted into the inventory as an obligation of someone. The pieces of paper are being parceled out and settling on accounts with a bar number all over the place. They're using 0.000 because it's easier than having an oddball weight. And if you actually physically were weighing gold bars, again, you can grab a 1 ounce silver coin, any kind you feel like grabbing, silver eagle, a panda bear, anything. Just get a stack of them, get you a little scale that can register it properly. See 32 point or 31 point something grams. You may find you have 30 grams, 31 grams, 32 grams. It's not going to be accurate every time. In other words, if you had all this piling up and did these big inventories and put them on the weight, you would physically not be able to have a number that ends in you know, 3,200 grams 0.000. It can't happen. It would be point something, not 000. That's what he's saying. That's how he knows it's paper settling. And he's right. So there's no way they can have that. It has to be an oddball weight, and they're not showing that. It is exactly what is going on in London. There's no difference. London is fixed with obligations. That same ounce of gold is obligated to so many other different people. It's incredible. That's what's going to happen with the COMEX. That's why MF Global was confiscated. JP Morgan owed all its gold and maybe some silver as well. So they just took it to London. That's why no one should be trading in the COMEX anymore. Just go buy physical metal and be thankful that you got it so cheap, even at today's prices. Don't ask what the price is. The most important thing is that it is physical. You can hold it. It's amazing what you will be able to buy with your silver and gold when the game ends. That's the big message that I can give you. I talked to Bart Chilton, and the numbers that they give us seem to be phony. If it's a physical market, how can all the inventory movements be possibly 0.000 as I just talked about? It can't. And why, when there's settlements, doesn't the silver change from the registered down to the eligible? Nothing goes down to the dealer. They have to settle. Are they settling through the adjustments? The figures they're reporting are phony. The other thing that is a huge concern is the numbers that are going through the silver vaults as opposed to gold. Gold on any given day is quite comatose. Every day in silver there are huge deposits, withdrawals, and adjustments. The fact that the movements are massive every single day is evidence that they are short physical metal, and they are scrambling to pay Peter, to pay Paul, etc. down in London, down in China, where they're asking for it. I hypothesized years ago that China was behind the main silver short, and it now seems that Turk and a few others believe that this is the case. I think he's talking about James Turk. China originally had 300 million ounces way back in 1949, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they stored it. Taiwan got China's 69 tons of gold, but the silver stayed in China for many years until China started to westernize. I believe China's 300 million ounces of silver became the original inventory for the SLV, along with Buffett's. We are now seeing all this inventory go, and China is now manipulating the silver market down to pick up silver. Silver demand is through the roof in China. They are massively importing tremendous amounts of silver. This accumulation will be really damaging to JP Morgan, who is massively short, who no matter what just cannot cover. They have to continually cover their shorts over and over and over again. Short positions. Keep an eye on the differential between the Shanghai silver price and the COMEX price. Unless you have a physical delivery unless you have a physical delivery mechanism, you have two different markets. So what you do is take delivery on the COMEX and ship it by plane to Shanghai. China could certainly bankrupt the COMEX anytime it wishes. If the Americans attempt to stop the silver exports, if they attempt that, expect a swift and fierce reaction by China. The worst thing is this will bankrupt the COMEX. A single 100-ton order and it's gone. It's finished. Bankrupt. The doc asked whether Shanghai and other Asian exchanges can simply cause the COMEX to fade into irrelevance. No, he says, it will default. Then it will automatically become irrelevant. The Bank of England is the center of the fraud. You have to look at the Bank of England. The Bank of England stores the gold for many nations in Europe. It's there as a sub-custodian for the GLD. That's paper gold, which claims it has massive amounts of gold stored to back the paper. But it's the same gold that these countries stored with them. Go figure. I wonder who's going to win that one. If you deposit your gold at the Bank of England, they can do whatever they want with it. It's for deposit. Kind of like a bank. Of course, they give you a lease rate, and they can lease it no matter what. So why would any place that's storing your gold, as a country even, give you a lease rate? That means they're actively leasing it. And what happens if they lease it out and say, hey, I need it back now? Oh, you don't have it. Uh-oh. Then what happens? That's the kind of stuff wars can start over. I'm talking world wars. Germany is now shocked out of their minds. They had no idea, which is fascinating because we told them 10 years ago. They did remove some of their gold in London 10 years ago, we recently found out, but everyone else is still keeping it there. And that is why we recently saw the Queen of England. It was a photo op to show that all the gold is there, but 70% has been leased out. And what you saw is what was left. Too much has been leased out, creating a derivative nightmare for the Bank of England, which in turn will knock out the SLV and GLD, which will then knock out our friends at the COMEX, and then we will have a financial nightmare. Regarding his outlook, gold and silver outlook for 2013, Harvey said, I think you will see a resolution of things by March, as far as metal manipulations. But we have to be very careful as we are going through the fiscal cliff. As we've seen, every time the Dow plummets, they hit gold and silver. They knock out the thermometer. They don't want to show that things are that bad. So in other words, as the Dow plummets, gold and silver should spike. But they're attacking silver and gold with every movement down on the Dow to pretend like, well, it's, the market generally is going down. In the thermometer is what he's saying. That would be the go-to thing. You know, what temperature is it? Look at the thermometer. How hot is it? Look at the thermometer. How cold is it today? Look at the thermometer. How's the financial system today? Look at gold and silver. That's what that's there for. But they manipulate everything so they can drag the price of gold and silver down too. And this is what we're all talking about. But they can only do it for so long, and we are now entering the end game. That doesn't mean that it can't go on for another couple years or so. It just means we are definitely entering the end game time frame based off of everything he's analyzing, myself included. These big, huge movements in the silver market, in the vaults. The U.S. Mint, oh, we're not going to make any more silver for the rest of 2012. Now, the last month of 2012, we're not going to make any more silver eagles. But by law, they are required to meet all demand for silver eagles. Sue us. I mean, right? Sue them. Wonder where that silver went. So he says he thinks there'll be a resolution by March. He thinks, doesn't mean it'll happen, by March regarding the precious metals. But we have to be very careful as we are going through the fiscal cliff. As we've seen, every time the Dow plummets, they hit gold and silver. They knock out the thermometer, so to speak. They don't want to show that things are that bad. So I will be careful. I really don't pay attention to the price. I just keep buying physical gold and silver. The politicians won't get their act together regarding the fiscal cliff until the Dow has crashed. I'm afraid that the economy will be so bad for us, for all of us, it will be what we're seeing in Spain and Greece. Now, I'm going to disagree, even though I may not be right, and say, well, he did use the word they won't get their act together regarding the fiscal cliff. I'm assuming he's saying we're going to go off the cliff in a few days and there's not going to be an agreement. Even if we do that, we allegedly have 2 to 3 months, according to little Timmy Geithner, Treasury guy, that would get us through that period, even if the fiscal cliff was, not met, or the deal wasn't coming to an agreement. I think they'll come to an agreement, as they always do. They want to scare you with the news. Oh, they're going to release prisoners. If the fiscal cliff is going to release prisoners, oh my God. They'll come to an agreement, as I said they would. That's what I still stand by that. I could be wrong, but I still stand by that. They'll come to an agreement. The key thing they have to get done, remove the debt ceiling limit. Remove it altogether. We don't ever want to vote on it again. And from what I've read, based off of what they're putting as amendments to the talks, is that either A, give us all of 2013, we can raise the debt ceiling wherever we need to raise it. Worst case scenario, if we can't come to a real good agreement. Give us all of 2013, no debt ceiling limit. Or better case, if we come to the real agreement, just remove the debt ceiling forever. That's what they're trying to pass. Therefore, I believe they will come to terms on that fiscal cliff here very soon. And again, even if it's a week or two after, as Timothy Geithner said, they've got 2 months to really take care of things before it really hits the fiscal cliff wall. So he says, well, that's it. That's actually it. So this is worthy of another read for sure. So that's it. Take care.